Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today is Friday and for me that means it is a folklore video kind of day. Today we are going to be focused on 3 scary folktales. They're relatively short, and if you're new here, hi. I like to do folklore videos on Fridays, and I also like to do my makeup at the same time just to kind of help me relax and kind of just be myself with you. So without further ado, let's just jump right on in to our 3 scary folktales. In the early 19th century, the Bell family moved into a log-built cabin in the Red River bottomlands of Tennessee. After about a decade of living in the house, strange activity started to occur. The Bell family would experience knocking, scratching, and what seemed to be something being dragged across the floor at all hours of the day and the night. Disturbed as the activity began to escalate over time, the daughters would start to complain that something was trying to pull off their sheets or was pinching them when they were trying to sleep. The father, John Bell, was determined to keep these happenings a secret, as he was worried what the community and the church would think of the entire situation. However, after a certain point, John Bell sought out one of his friends, James Johnson, and told him about the entire ordeal. James was initially pretty skeptical about the phenomena and the happenings that John Bell told him, until one night when he stayed at the Bell family house and ended up experiencing the entity for himself. After Johnson's visit, word of what was happening at the Bell house spread throughout the community, and from the attention of the entire ordeal, the entity was actually able to grow stronger. It seemed to become even more intelligent and began communicating, claiming that it was the spirit of a local witch named Kate Batts. This is what gave the rise to the nickname the Bell Witch. She was said to sing hymns, argue religions, and one time recited 2 different sermons that were happening at 2 completely different churches, 13 miles apart. The entity's activity became so popular that General Andrew Jackson and some of his men visited the cabin, and after just one night of staying there, they quickly departed. Later, Jackson supposedly said that he would rather fight the British in New Orleans than fight the Bell Witch. In 1820, John Bell died, and the Bell Witch claims that she was the one to have poisoned him. The entity then disappeared for a while, only to return to convince the daughters not to marry and to speak to the son. After speaking to John Bell Jr. in 1828, the entity claimed that she would disappear for now, but would return in 1935 to haunt any of the Bell family descendants. Dr. Charles Bailey Bell, a neurologist in Nashville, was at the time John Bell's closest living relative in 1935. It is unknown if Charles Bell was haunted by the witch like she had promised. To this day, the tale of the Bell Witch has never been able to be disproven. And it is actually one of the most famous ghost stories and folktales told in Appalachia. A girl named Celia was said to have a dream of a white wolf chasing her around her house, gaining on her until it was able to pounce and rip her throat out. This dream would cause her to wake up screaming. When morning would arrive that same day, it seemed to be a completely normal day. Celia actually would forget the dream up until the moment when her parents mentioned that she was going to be spending the night alone tonight, as they were going to go out and celebrate their anniversary. This brought the dream flooding back to Celia, and she realized that in the dream, her parents were gone and she was home alone because they had left her there to go celebrate their anniversary. She felt herself turn pale and started pleading with her parents to stay home. Her parents wrote off her pleading, essentially stating that it was just a dream, and told Celia that she would be staying home alone that night. The day went on, and as it was time for her parents to leave, Celia locked the door quickly behind them, then proceeded to check all of the windows and doors of the house to make sure they were all locked. As night came, Celia tried to calm herself, and she climbed into bed to attempt to get some sleep. Suddenly, Celia woke up to the sound of glass shattering. Sitting up warily, Celia could still hear the trickle of glass falling and soon felt a cool draft through the house. A window had broken. Then, shortly after, she realized she could hear the sound of sniffing, loud sniffing, like a dog trying to follow a scent trail. Celia froze. It had to be a wolf, but she thought normal wolves don't break windows to a house to hunt. She realized it had to be a werewolf. Celia could hear the taps of the creature's nails hitting the floor as it walked around, and she could smell the musky wet fur as it walked up to her bedroom door. Just beyond the door, she could hear the wolves panting. Celia sprang out of bed, headed for the bathroom, and then down the stairs in the attempt to avoid the wolf. She heard a loud growl and the sound of the wolf pursuing her as she made it down the stairs. With a quick glance at a window, Celia could see the wolf was gaining on her as it leapt down the last couple of stairs. Celia made it out of the house and started to run down the gravel driveway with her feet screaming in pain as she did so. She needed to make it to the tool shed. She was after any tool that could be used as a weapon. A baseball bat, a shovel, whatever she could get her hands on first. Before Celia made it to the shed, the huge white werewolf was standing in front of her with beady red eyes. Quickly, Celia changed directions and fled towards the other side of the house to go around back to avoid the wolf. She could hear the wolf howl and then spring into a full sprint behind her as she heard the terrifying sound of its pounding feet. Faster, faster, she pleaded with herself, desperately panting as she choked on the fear and exhaustion. Her plan was to run around the back of the house and back towards the shed again, but she then felt the wolf snap at the back of her leg. She felt a sting of pain as the teeth had grazed her skin, which gave her a boost of adrenaline and helped her put on more speed. Then, out of nowhere, the wolf veered away from Celia. She couldn't hear it, she couldn't see it, and she continued to run to the front of the house. As she did, she could hear the sound of a car coming up the driveway. It was her parents. All of this gave her a huge sense of relief and hope as she started to believe her parents would be able to save her from the wolf. But as Celia ran past the porch, something caught her eye. Her heart stopped at what she had seen. The wolf was perched on the railing of the porch, perfectly balancing and waiting for her to come that way. With absolutely no time for Celia to react, the wolf pounced on her. It used its sharp teeth to bite her neck and rip out her throat. They both fell to the ground and blood spilled everywhere. Celia died quickly after hitting the ground. Essentially, not even a minute later, her parents made it up the driveway, exposing the entire scene with their headlights. Frightened and blinded by the beaming lights, the wolf backed away from its kill and ran off into the night. A couple, Susan and Ned, were driving on a wooded road. It was a dark and stormy night. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and the downpour was making it extremely difficult to see anything. "We'd better stop," Susan says. Ned agreed, attempting to step on the brake, but the car started to glide across the wet pavement. They hydroplaned off the road, plunging down a hill and tucking in between some trees. Shaken by the ordeal, Ned checked on Susan to make sure she was okay. She nodded and they both attempted to look out the rain-soaked windows. "I'm going to go see how bad it is," Ned told Susan right before he went out into the storm. Susan watched his blurry figure move around the car, illuminated by the headlights, right before he jumped back in. Soaking wet, Ned says, "The damage isn't bad, but we are wheel deep in mud, and we are going to need to find some help." Susan swallowed nervously. There would be no speedy rescue. They both knew where they were, but no one had said it aloud. Axe Murder Hollow. This is the place where a man allegedly once took an axe and murdered his wife in cold blood in a jealous rage over an alleged affair. Supposedly, the axe-wielding spirit of the husband continues to haunt the woods. Ned turned off the headlights and told Susan to lock the doors behind him, and then he left. Susan heard a scream from outside the car, followed by a loud thump and a strange gurgling noise. She tried, but she couldn't see anything through the rain-soaked windows and the dark. Terrified, she just kind of shrank into her seat, anxiously waiting for Ned to return. Then she noticed another sound. Bump, bump, bump. It was soft, like something blowing in the wind. Then, out of nowhere, the car was illuminated by a light, followed by a very official sounding voice telling her to step out of the car. Susan thought it might have been the police, either that Ned had found or had luckily seen their car from the road. Slowly, she unlocked the door and stepped out. Her eyes took a second to adjust to this bright light, but then she saw it. Hanging from his feet from the tree next to the car was Ned. He was dead. His throat had been cut so deeply that he had been nearly decapitated. The stormy winds blew so hard it caused his body to sway back and forth, hitting into the tree, making that bump, bump, bump sound. Susan screamed and ran towards the voice and the light, but as she got closer, she realized the light was not coming from a flashlight, but instead the man himself was glowing. He was a glowing figure of a man with a crazed smile and a large, definitely very real axe in his hands. Susan backed away from the spirit until she had bumped into the car. "Playing around while my back was turned," the spirit said, stroking the blade of the axe. "You've been very naughty." The last thing Susan saw was the glint of the axe blade in the eerie incandescent light. Okay, and that wraps up today's video of 3 scary folk tales. This is the look. What do we think? I like it. I feel pretty cool. I'm a fan. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you sticking around, and I look forward to seeing you next week with a new folklore video. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I really do look forward to chatting with you again. And on that note, I will see you all soon. Bye.